Hello everyone. Thank you all for watching the video and leaving meaningful comments. Wishing everyone good health and happiness.
My mother-in-law, with her colorful headscarf, quietly stepped down to the wood-burning kitchen, where the flickering firelight reflected on her face. She carefully lit the fire, placed a pot of water on the stove, and waited for it to boil. The small kitchen was cramped but cozy, with the smell of wood smoke lingering in the air. Once the water was hot enough, she poured it into a blue plastic basin and carried it upstairs. Linda, the family's new daughter-in-law, sat on a chair with her bare feet resting in the warm water. My mother-in-law knelt down, her rough hands gently washing Linda's feet. Her movements were clumsy but filled with care. In that moment, her eyes held a hint of sadness, as if she were reminiscing about the days when I was still at home. Memories of me taking care of her surfaced in her mind, weighing heavily on her heart. But she quickly returned to the present and continued her task. After finishing washing Linda's feet, she stood up, wiped her hands on the towel draped over her shoulder, and walked out to the garden. My father-in-law was sitting on an old wooden chair under the shade of a tree. She approached him and sat down beside him. The two began discussing the wedding arrangements for Mr. Pow and Linda. Their voices were low and interspersed with sighs. She shared with him her feelings about seeing Linda in their home, both the joy of having a new daughter-in-law and the inevitable emptiness she felt in my absence. Early one morning, I stepped out of my makeshift house and looked around at the mountain scenery, shrouded in a thin layer of mist. I decided to borrow a knife from a neighbor to head into the forest and cut bamboo for building a new house. The path wasn't too far, but each step carried the weight of my worries about my current life. When I arrived, I knocked on the door and asked the neighbor for a knife. They agreed, handing me a sharp blade while giving me a few words of advice before I left. I began my journey into the forest, where lush green bamboo stretched across the hillside. The sound of birds echoed in the tranquil space. I chose the straightest and sturdiest bamboo stalks, carefully cutting them down one by one with the knife. Sweat began soaking through my shirt, but I persevered with my work. While dragging the bamboo down, I happened to spot a ripe orange hanging on a nearby branch. Unable to resist its allure, I plucked it and ate it to stave off hunger. Continuing to pull the bamboo along the narrow dirt road, I passed by a house under construction. Workers were diligently building, their hammering and conversations resonating steadily. I paused for a moment to observe how they assembled the house, from framing to roofing. The scene inspired me to apply their methods to constructing my own home. When I returned to my dwelling, I started building the house with the bamboo I had brought back. Carefully measuring and assembling, I constructed the frame in the simplest way possible. Each bamboo pole was securely tied with jungle ropes, forming a sturdy structure. Though the work was exhausting, it brought me satisfaction as each part of the house slowly came together. After finishing the house, hunger set in, so I decided to cross the road in search of food. I spotted a large bunch of bananas hanging from a nearby tree. Using my knife, I cut down the bunch and brought it back home. Peeling each banana, I ate them to regain energy after a long day of labor. Sitting beside my newly built house, I admired my accomplishment with quiet joy and deep meaning. Though simple, this house would shelter me during these challenging days. The sounds of nature blended with my silent thoughts, like an encouraging reminder that despite hardships, there is always hope ahead. In the peaceful atmosphere of the wooden house, my parents-in-law had just returned from inviting relatives to the wedding of Mr. Pow and Linda. They sat down on the old furniture, poured tea for their guests, and chatted excitedly about the upcoming celebration. Laughter and conversation filled the air, blending with the familiar sounds of the mountains and forests. However, this lively scene was abruptly interrupted when three unfamiliar young men entered the house with serious expressions. The three men announced that the house had been mortgaged for a debt of 300 million VND. If the money wasn't repaid soon, the house would be confiscated. Their words struck like lightning, leaving both my mother-in-law and father-in-law in shock. My mother-in-law quickly stood up and frantically searched for the house documents in the wooden cabinet. She rummaged through every drawer and corner but couldn't find them. Panic was evident on her face, while my father-in-law sat silently, his eyes filled with worry. She desperately pleaded with the young men for a few more days to find a way to gather the money. After some negotiation, they agreed and left, leaving behind a heavy atmosphere in the house. As soon as the door closed, my mother-in-law turned to blame me for taking the house documents. She raised her voice in accusation, claiming that I was the reason for the family's dire situation. My father-in-law also sided with her, his eyes filled with disappointment. Unable to sit still, both decided to go find me to clarify what had happened. They hurried out of the house, their steps quick and urgent along the dirt road leading into the village. Anger mixed with anxiety about the future of their home, a place that had been with their family for generations, filled their hearts. My mother-in-law's accusations continued to echo incessantly as though she wanted to vent all her frustrations on the person she believed caused this mess. Meanwhile, the three young men disappeared down a winding path, leaving behind a family engulfed in chaos and uncertainty. The story of the missing house documents quickly became the talk of the village, and all suspicions were directed at me, the daughter-in-law who had once been cast out of their home. James returned to the place where I was staying, his face filled with worry. He looked around the area with a scrutinizing gaze and told me that this place was very dangerous due to the risk of landslides, especially after the recent heavy rains. His voice was full of sincerity as he advised me to move to a safer location. I was stunned by his advice, feeling both grateful for his concern and confused about where I could go given my current circumstances. Meanwhile, my in-laws and Mr. Pow had approached the police officers to report the loss of the land documents. They accused me of taking the house papers, putting the family in a difficult situation. The police listened to their story and decided to accompany them to my residence to clarify the matter. The group, including my in-laws, Mr. Pow, and the police officers, quickly set out. When they arrived, my in-laws' eyes were filled with anger. My mother-in-law loudly scolded me, while Mr. Pow approached with an intent to cause trouble. I stood still, unsure of what to do in the face of their rage. But at that moment, the police officers intervened just in time to stop them before things got out of hand. One of the officers looked at me and said, "Here's Diep. We invite Ms. Diep to come with us to the station." His words left everyone around stunned. James didn't stay silent. He spoke up in my defense, urging the police to investigate thoroughly rather than relying solely on accusations from Mr. Pow's family. His words brought me some comfort amidst this stressful situation. Even though everyone around doubted me, James maintained his belief that I was innocent. On the way to the police station, I walked quietly with my head down, weighed down by the accusations and judgmental looks from my in-laws. Yet alongside this heaviness was James's trust, a small ray of light amid the darkness, that helped me hold on to hope that the truth would eventually come to light. The sound of footsteps echoed on the rugged dirt road, carrying with it a glimmer of hope for a fairer tomorrow for me. When we arrived at the police station, I was asked to recount everything from beginning to end. The officers began gathering information and conducting a thorough investigation. During this time, James remained by my side like a silent protector. His presence made me feel less alone amid all the scrutinizing eyes and relentless questioning from the police. The atmosphere at the station was tense but also carried a hint of hope that everything would be clarified. I looked at James with deep gratitude for his trust and support during one of the most challenging moments of my life.